Hello and welcome to Ruslan's Bortnik YouTube channel in English. My name is James Thalberg and I'm here today again with Ruslan Bortnik, going to discuss the latest update about Ukraine. Ruslan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for helping me with it, James, very much. Thank you.
Of course. Ruslan, I want to start with the update that we've got from the IMF. They have made a new forecast predicting that the war in Ukraine will end either in late 2025 or mid-2026. So they've outlined two scenarios with the baseline, that's the positive one, that assumes that the war will end by late 2025, while the downside scenario predicts it will continue until mid-2026. In my perspective, it sounds like both of these predictions are quite positive and they estimate the end of war earlier than it might happen. What do you think about those predictions? And based on what do you think, or what data they're using to calculate their predictions?
Yeah, I think it's also is very positive considering of the situation, and it's a kind of wishful thinking. I think so, because if you will look back in the previous predictions of IMF in prediction in 2022, 2023, each year IMF said the next year war will stop.
Will be the final year.
Yeah, it will be the final year of the war. So we have a very positive estimation of Ukrainian economy future, and so on and so on and so on. I think it's a kind of wishful thinking, and it's a kind of managing of public opinion and public affairs, because for Ukraine it's very important to save our entrance to a presence in the international finance markets, to save our ability to earn additional money from the commercial sector, and so on. And the IMF is trying to convince the other financial players about the positive political future of the Ukraine. Because I don't see, maybe IMF is okay. Maybe their prediction, maybe this time, maybe this
is going to be right. Yeah.
Yes, I'm wash my hands for it, and I want just to say that we don't have any reasoning and we don't see any modeling, math modeling, and so on, which could support this prediction, which could say for us that it's not only a prediction, but it's like a modeling,
a realistic scenario.
What is like in a calculation of the future. I don't think so. IMF is a great guys, but very often they are far away from the real doings on the battlefields, Ukrainian battlefields, and Ukrainian situation. Ukrainian cooperation with IMF is very interesting thing, because, for example, Russia is also a member of IMF, and Russia gives a money
contribution.
Every year, and partially this money also is going on to support for Ukraine. We are living in very weird world with a very strange things happening every day.
Yeah, it's a very hybrid system where Russia is one of the contributors into the IMF, and then IMF is the lender of the Ukrainian money that Ukraine receives as international funds or loans, and so on and so on. Now, if that scenario is less realistic and they don't have all the data, considering, for example, the war situation on the front line, the economical situation, the political situation, what do you think will be a more realistic scenario for the end of the war between Ukraine and Russia, if we're putting aside for a second the potential negotiations between Putin and Trump?
Of course, I am representing a big think tank in Ukraine, which is working from 2012, but we are not able to compete IMF in their predictions. To say frankly, in this situation, nobody knows. Too many players, too many reasons, too many factors in this game. So the honesty answer for your question, nobody knows. The maximum horizon of our prediction is 3 months, And for six months, we are able to calculate something. We are able to make a few scenario models. If we are
what would be the percentage for that 6 months? Like 50% hit,
near
50%?
near 50%. If we are talking about the years, we are talking only about the modeling on scenario with the probability of near 20%, 10%, and even less, because we don't know exactly. No one knows exactly.
It's simply hard to get all the necessary data to make a long-range prediction.
Resources of the sites, and no one knows exactly even the true goals of the site, because in public goals there's some very often they are only in the top of iceberg, but more often it's only a false goals or misinformation goals which are covering the real goals of the sites.
You've mentioned that it's more possible to make a prediction for the next 3 months. Saying that, like a lot of people are expecting something magical to happen when Trump will enter the office and will start the negotiations, if he will start, and will, start his agenda already as a president and not just the president-elect. In the next 3 months, do you think the war has any chances to stop, or what will continue happening on the front line and between Ukraine and Russia?
The most probable scenario for the next 3 months is the continuation of the war and starting of the negotiations. And these two things will exist together at the same time, at the same place, very often.
They'll start a negotiation, but they'll continue fighting.
Yeah. Because it's very easy to start negotiation. It's much harder to find even ceasefire agreement. I'm not even talking about the agreement about the ending of the war, peaceful agreement, and the much more harder even to fulfill these possible agreements in the future in the battlefields.
Now, if we're taking the negotiations and you're saying that they can start negotiations as they keep fighting, I'm assuming, the Trump's team already have started some communication with Russians, with Vladimir Putin and his team. What do you think so far they have agreed on? At what stage those negotiations are standing? Like what meditators are playing in the game? And just what they have agreed on and how those negotiations will become public will look like from what we can know now.
It looks like Trump uses as a few mediators of negotiators between the United States and Ukraine, United States and Russia. We are talking about, of course, a special mission of Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, who spent a few hours in the United States discussing with Trump, and then he called to Russian president and had a talk with him for an hour. And then he tried to make a call to Ukraine, but he was just kicked off. He was just sent out from this dialogue. Ukraine refused to talk with Hungarian Prime Minister because the main strategy, negotiation strategy for nowadays Ukraine, it's a straight dialogue with Trump, without any mediators, without any negotiators. Then we have also the different missions of Tucker Carlson to the Moscow, not only Putin, but also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov. I'm sure that Carlson is also able to be a postman, to bring some letters, some messages from the new administration. And then also we have a mission of Scholz, Macron, to divided mission, because Macron, after the meeting with Trump, is trying to prepare the peaceful mission to Ukraine, the peace forces for Ukraine, and Scholz is preparing to call or to maybe to visit the Moscow after the call and discussion with Trump. So we have these mediators of negotiators from United States. Ukrainian strategy is no mediators at all. because the only one chance of Ukraine to change this very negative trend, to convince the Trump to choose another strategy for Ukraine, not the pushing to the peace, but the giving them more money and more weapon for Ukraine. And Trump needs these negotiators because it's also methods of sharing responsibility.
Yeah, he's trying to avoid taking responsibility over finishing
like
the conflict.
It was in Minsk agreement when the United States was over this situation. United States was absent around the table, but United States was over the situation, and it helped United States to avoid their reputation loses after the breaking that agreement. But I'm sure that without the straight participation, the face-to-face participation of the Trump, the possible even ceasefire agreement will not be achievable, because Ukraine and the forces behind Ukraine, European radical forces, and also Russia, they are insisting on the straight dialogue with the Trump, with a straight dialogue with the United States. And only the United States could give the real security guarantees for Ukraine, for example, and the United States could give the real things which Russia wants for nowadays.
So if we go again to potential negotiations, what do you think they have agreed already on? Like, for example, they want to stop the war at the front line, whatever is the line at the moment right now. What they're going to push Ukraine to do? For example, they'll hold off Ukraine from joining NATO for the next 20 to 50 years. What are the potential key points to start, or to keep pursuing those negotiations?
If we will try to analyze the public statements of the sides, it looks like there is a compromise between the United States and Russia on the Ukrainian non-membership in NATO. The first thing is on the weakening the sanction against Russia. The other thing on the peace on front line. We are talking about there is no territorial changes after the claiming the ceasefire agreement. It means that Russia will keep control over the occupied lands of Ukraine. And
Ruslan, so those are all the compromises from the Western side, from Ukraine, from the US towards the Russians. What compromises Russia is going on?
It's not compromises for Russia, because if you are talking about the stable front line and factual new border, we are talking about the Russian guarantees about not to make a new offensive operation towards Ukraine. But at the same time, I want to remind you that Russia claimed all the territory of Khersonska, Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and other oblasts of Ukraine like their own territories. And
in their administration line.
We are talking about two big cities like Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. This is one very important compromise for Russian side. The other side is, of course, it's existence of independent sovereign Ukrainian state, which will be in the Western zone of influence in the future, not in the Russian zone of influence. But at the same time, one of the main goals of Russian offensive operation, the Russian full-scale invasion to Ukraine, was to change the Ukrainian government, to make Ukraine pro-Russian, to move Ukraine to the pro-Russian,
to hold it under its influence.
So it's also a very important part of compromises, and it means if Russia will agree these compromises, it means that Russia is refusing and forgetting about its own letters to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, in December 2021, before the war, and to NATO about the dividing the zone of political, military, and economical influence in post-Soviet lands and in the Eastern Europe. So for United States, the biggest winner in this situation, United States in the West, because Russia will be blocked in this situation in Ukrainian lands. But for Russia, it's also a good chance to take a pause, to take a time for rearming, for rebuilding their economy, for preparing for the future possible competition with the West. For Ukraine, is a chance also to give more fresh air for the economy, for the state, maybe to rebuild some countries, to renew some countries, which is hardly suffering all these 3 years war, the population of which is very tired, very exhausted.
Of course, because the war is on the Ukrainian land.
And and this population is not more ready to continue this fight for the next years.
Ruslan, Putin has held his annual press conference. It was about a 4-hour conference. He have made a couple of insightful statements, but I'm just curious, from your perspective, from political analyst, what were your key takeaways? If you're sitting and making notes, what are the biggest takeaways in terms of notes from that press conference? What has sparked your attention?
It was very long conference, 4 hours and 40 minutes.
He's definitely in shape for his age.
And of course, I'm not going to repeat all the topics of this conference because it will takes a long time of our vlog. But what I'm willing to underline, what I have taken from this conference. Putin was trying to achieve some goals. The first, his goal was an attempt to show his confidence about the future of Russia and about the Russian victory in the Russian-Ukrainian war. So there were a lot.
Can I pause you here for a second? If that was his goal, that means that it's not as clear as it should be. Because if you need to prove something, then maybe it's not as good as it is in reality.
Yes, of course. And the war every day is questioning this confidence every day. And we are writing this vlog in the situation when Ukrainian forces using Western long-range rockets are targeting a lot of goals on Russian lands and so on. The European part of Russia is partly destabilized part because the normal, ordinary social life there is very complicated because of every day and almost every night Ukrainian drone attacks and sometimes rocket attacks. So Putin wanted to convince the society so that we are winning. We are very strong. Everything is under control. And Putin also wanted to persuade the Western society. We are winning this war, so you have to accept our terms of peace. In other way, the situation will be much harder, much complicated for Ukraine in the future. You have to accept. If you don't believe me, we can make some kind of duel. Technical duel. We will use our Oreshnik against your anti-aircraft
air defense
system, and let's try to play this game. Let's try to compare our military abilities. If you don't believe me, such Putin said such things in his press conference. This is one thing. The second thing was kind of very soft preparation of Russian society for the future economic problem.
Ruslan, but before we go there, that statement with the Oreshnik and, playing this game with, let's see whose systems are better. I've seen in the Ukrainian media that has sparked a lot of anger and a lot of emotional responses. How so? I mean, Russians are shooting almost every day into, Ukrainian cities, into big cities, I think they have used the Rushnik about 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Dnipro city. Like it's ongoingly the case. They're sending those missiles and rockets into Ukraine. Why Ukrainians got so emotional when it's just their reality? It's harsh to say that, but they're dealing with that every day. And he just said, "Oh, let's keep playing this game. Let's just make it official." But you've been doing it for all this time.
You are reminding me that Ukrainian president said that Putin, he is
A dumbass.
Is it correct word?
No, it's not, but let's keep it as a dumbass.
Okay, I have another translation, like a stupid. I think people understand.
It will be cut off from the
Yeah, because YouTube is YouTube has its own rules, so we are not able to say it in public. But it was very hard word, authentic word, if we can say this. And then the head of the office of president said that the Russian president is a cretin. It's a French word. It means which means a person with a very low level of consciousness development. how to say why this reaction was so not even unpolite, so rude and brutal? It's very important question, and if we are talking about the level of the heads of states, because Ukrainian side accept this Putin's words about the Russian and about his power, about his ability, like a method, like a tool of pressure to Ukraine, to Western partners, like an attempt from Putin's side to make him the best, the strongest guy in the room. And so in other way, Ukrainian side said that you are not the strongest man in the room. You are a very bad person, and we don't afraid of you. We don't afraid of your weapon. So it was a fight on this informational and mental level between the leadership of Ukraine and Russia, between the leadership of Russia and the West. It's also very important because we are now in the preparation stage before the negotiation, and the ability of disability to put himself in the high of this negotiation position is extremely important for the future of these negotiations.
Anything else that you can underline?
It was also second. It was also preparation of Russian society for the future economical program. It was a very hard question about the inflation in Russian economy, and Putin say that maybe we will make some slowly breaks in Russian economy for
slow down the economic growth.
The development of Russian economy to take over the control of the inflation. And also there was a very interesting topic of how useful, how valuable are for Russia Ukrainian occupied territories. Putin announced a big infrastructure project.
In terms of the finances, like not only
finances also, but Putin announced a big infrastructure project. It's a road, it's a round road around the Azov Sea, which will help Russia to habit this area of coast of Azov Sea and so on. This is very pleasure area for the living. For example, especially if you are talking about the Russian society, the bigger part of Russian lands is not a very good environment condition to live.
We're talking about climate. That around the Azov Sea, it's a very habitable place.
Azov Sea is very warm place with a very good, not very deep sea, with a good natural resources, good, very good, extremely good agricultural productions, and so on and so on. Very good lands. And he said also about that he tried to persuade Russian society in the topic of financial support of these new lands, occupied Russian lands. Because there is very popular thought in Russian society that Russia spends too much spends for the infrastructure, for the support, social support of these new lands, and it exhausts in Russia. Otherwise, against it, Putin said that it's not so, because these new regions of Russia are giving for Russian budget more and more tax incomes, and for 100% of growing up the tax incomes to Russian budget. But we counted the situation, we checked this situation. For now, there's only for 20% these occupied territories are covering that amount of money which Russia is spending for their existence.
So it's 1/5.
Yeah,
1/5 is.
Yeah. 80% of social expenditures, salaries, pensions, infrastructure, and so on, are covering from the Russian state budget. And this is
so they're not profitable. They are 80%. They are donated by the Russian budget.
They are not profitable at all. And Putin was trying to convince Russian society that they are more and more profitable. And maybe in the future, it will be like a diamond in the Russian lands. It will be very good lands.
Right. Ruslan, let's go into the visuals on the map to see what's happening at the moment in the front line, if there are any changes and if there are any new trends, and how Ukraine is dealing with the constant but slow Russian offensive on the eastern side.
This is a deep state map. As you see, it was before, but I will start from another point this day, because this map now is renewing very bad, because
when you're saying that it's renewing really bad, it's not up to date, it's slower than the actual situation on the front line.
It's not updating very fast because of conflict between the leaders, between the people who are working on this project with the military commanders of Ukraine, Syrsky.
So basically, it's on purpose. It's not a technical issue. It's just like somebody doesn't want people to see the actual update, what's happening on the front line in terms of maps.
Journalists who are working this project said that they are under the pressure from the military commanders of Ukraine.
So would you be able to show us what can we see on the map, and what in your opinion?
Let's try what happened during the last week, for example.
Yeah.
I will try to back. December 17, we see that Russia was controlling 111,677 square kilometers of Ukrainian lands. For nowadays, after the week, Russia is controlling for 100 square kilometers more. So the Russian achievements for 1 week, not less than 100 square kilometers. And generally, this situation happened in around the Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, and Kurahovo place. You can see what happened during the week. Russia was tightening the surroundings around the Kurahovo, and Russia continue its offensive operation in the southern Pokrovsk, Mirnograd. Russia achieved during the week not less than 10 new settlements, but it's like villages, not very big settlements. But Ukrainian forces are not able to stop this Russian move near Pokrovsk and near Kurahovo. It looks like in Kurahovo, Ukraine lost all habitat area. All the part of city which were habited is lost by Ukrainian side. Ukraine is controlling only industrial part of the city, industrial zone of the city. Here is in Pokrovsk. During the Pokrovsk, Russian forces are trying to achieve the region of village Udachne, because there are situated the chemical mines of Ukrainian industries.
Ukrainian natural resources.
Yeah, very important.
And we've talked about
expensive.
it last time. Some of the mines are still active.
Yeah, some of the mines are still active, but Russia is trying to achieve this zone because it means that Ukrainian iron steel industry will lose more than 60% of necessary coal and resources for it's doing it. It will be a problem for Ukraine. There is no very significant changes in the map during the last time, but Russian forces are continuing this offensive operation. They are very close now to Dnipropetrovsk Oblast already, 7 kilometers to the border of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and they are very close to capturing the Kurahovo region and to growing up the pressure for Zaporizhzhia Oblast and going up the pressure movement toward the west of Ukraine, toward the Zaporizhzhia to Dnipro. Because it's also very important, Ukrainian defense line in this direction are almost broken. There are no a very good prepared, made it in iron and concrete defense line behind of this zone, and it could be a problem for Ukraine in the future.
So it's accessible for Russians to keep moving faster once they achieve those cities.
Some militaries in Ukraine are saying that if this situation will going on in the next year, there is possible situation of collapse of Ukrainian front in some directions, which means that Russian troops will be able to move very fast, like in the beginning of the war, in some directions.
When you say fast, what do you mean by that? How fast are they able again to catch?
20-30 kilometers per day.
So realistically, if the front line collapses, they'll be able to.
Like it was in the first month of the war.
So they'll be able again to potentially go, for example.
I don't know how it's realistic, but it looks like the Ukrainian forces are hardly exhausted. And the Ukrainian forces, we have mobilization process, very intensive mobilization process now in Ukraine. But at the same time, the amount of Ukrainian forces are increasing because we have a lot of people, deserters, a lot of people who left the army, their own evil. We have a lot of losses and so on and so on. And our mobilization is not able even to cover this estimated losses.
To catch up. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and I want to add also the situation near the Borovaya. Borovaya, it's a left bank of the river Oskil. We're worsening during this week, and Russia is trying to achieve this big settlement in Kharkivska Oblast. Russia is trying to clean all the left bank of the river of Oskil, to capture all these territories, and Russia had some achievements during this week in this direction. And of course, extremely heavy fights in Kursk direction, in Kursk, Ukrainian Platsdarm in Kursk Oblast. Now we see Ukrainian forces are keeping control over 482 square kilometers. In the beginning of the week, it was
above 500.
It was about 500, some more, but the clashes there is extremely heavy. It's extremely heavy. Russia is using the North Korean troops. Russia is using the North Korean artillery very active there. And moreover, I'm almost sure that Russia will try to make a final assault, final offensive operation on this direction in next weeks till the inauguration of new United States president.
So basically, they'll try to take over that land before the official start of the negotiations.
Yeah.
Ruslan, thank you so much for all the comments today, for all the insights, and we'll be back with more updates next week.
Thank you, James, for helping me, for the great questions. Dear friends, don't forget to subscribe for our channel and we'll be lucky to answer for your questions also. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruslan.